Entering the atmosphere in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined as always by Doom Crossing. Doom, how are you today, my friend? What is on your shirt? I thought it was the Quake logo, but I don't think that's what it is.
Oh no, it's a Tech 9 shirt. That's the
Let's go.
Music logo. It's a little bit hard to see in the
I
camera,
can see it now,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Good job. I've got my Sting shirt on today, actually. The Icon Sting of old WCW fame.
Yeah, I have a few Tech 9 shirts, actually, so I've probably worn them on the podcast before, but I just, threw this one on today while I was doing my my housework.
Nice.
But yeah, it's actually funny. I have some updates from last week, but obviously we had some more pressing matters to discuss at the top of the episode from last week, so I kind of ignored those. But yeah, I did want to say that I did finally finish my Metroid Prime 4 Beyond hard mode playthrough. And it's actually funny, when I restarted it, I technically did a deathless hard mode run, so had to throw that one out there. But yeah, it's officially done. I've done everything possible in Metroid Prime 4, unlocked every item, and yeah, I can finally close the book on this game. And yeah, obviously I sent you some materials to put the finishing touches on your guide, and while you've been finishing that up, I have been working on my own little surprise Omega Metroid project that I'm not going to give you a guaranteed release date, but I'm pretty confident should be done before the end of March, maybe even by the beginning of the March. But again, no promises there. But that's been really fun. It's been really fun tackling that.
Well, there you go. I look forward to seeing that come to fruition. I debated whether we should spend a second talking about this on this week's show as well, and I think we're going to. You mentioned the stuff that we had more pressing issues last week, and we did have more pressing issues last week. We talked to our community, our listeners, about the ice raids that are going on, and just like how unconstitutional and frankly evil it all is. And, for the most part, I would say, listen, usually when we bring up topics such as these on Omega Metroid or the Zelda cast, there is a contingent of the limp stick to Metroid or stick to Zelda crew that will always come in and prattle off their opinions. And I would say this time almost nobody did that, but there were a few. And I just I gotta say, definitively, if you listen to a podcast and you are commenting and you are telling the people creating that podcast what they can and cannot talk about, it might be time to move on from that podcast, because we will never not bring up issues that are important to us. The reason we bring it up on a Metroid podcast is because we feel the message is so important that we need to use our platform in order to signal boost that message. So I'm not interested in arguing. I'm not interested in debating. If you disagree, farewell. It really is as easy as that. There are some issues that I draw the line on, and this is one of them. And I think if you're of the opinion that these ice raids or even frankly the Epstein files that just came out are not a deal breaker for you, I guess I just don't think that you should enjoy my content then, or the content that we make here on Omega Metroid or the Zelda cast or whatever podcast that we do. So, and that's if you disagree, okay, nobody needs to make a big deal of it. You could just go on to the next podcast that you want to listen to and enjoy it. But it won't be this podcast, because we will use our platform for things that we believe in. That won't change. And for all the geeks out there that are stick to Metroid, no. End of story.
We were sticking to Metroid. Everyone was complaining about that too. So it's I don't know. What do y'all want? I actually do want to give a shout out. I'm not going to say their name because I don't know if they want their story to be spread outside the Discord server. But yeah, one of our staff members who contributes to the site, actually told their own story in the Discord server as well about how they kind of used to be in that kind of, keep the politics out of my Metroid crowd. But then it was actually from a statement that you initially made in the early days of the podcast. Actually, it might have been when I was on there as well, now that I'm thinking about it. But
I think it was when Roe versus Wade was overturned. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You're correct. Yeah. So I was definitely on the podcast at that point. But but yeah, at first they kind of had that same mentality, but they talked about how it kind of forced them to question their beliefs, and it was that kind of spark that kind of led them down to this path to where they are today, and on the completely opposite side of the fence, so to speak. So yeah, stories like that definitely, it makes me feel good that, like, we're not just doing it to sit upon our high horse. We are, like, even if it's in a very small way, making a difference in people's lives just by, refusing to be silent about things that matter.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up too, because I'm sure what I just said came off as harsh, and it was. But here's the other side of that too. Okay, no matter how far down the wrong path that you go, you can still turn around. And if you do, come back and listen to these shows. We'd love to have you. But it takes courage and effort to turn around from that path. And, some people are willing to do it, and some people may think that they have went too far down the path. But I will tell you, like, no matter how far you are, you can turn around. So let's leave it at that, because I don't want to spend any more time talking about this. But that's just what we believe in. It's what I believe in, and it's not going to change. So just wanted to put our foot in the ground for everybody this week. So now, that being said, let's talk about Metroid, because we do have some Metroid news to get to today, or actually some non-news, as it were. And we are going to be... So we're rapidly coming to a close on our solely Metroid Prime 4 dedicated episodes. By my count, and I could be wrong, but we've got 2 episodes left. So we're going to rank the areas this week, and then next week, we are going to definitively rank Metroid Prime 4. Now, obviously, we're going to do a bunch of shows that are kind of Metroid Prime 4 adjacent. Well, in the coming weeks, you can expect to hear what we want from Metroid Prime 5, what lessons Metroid Prime 5 should learn from Metroid Prime 4, shows that are kind of future-based. And we'll do the same thing for Metroid 6, too, by the way. And there will be some old series returning that haven't been around in a while. But, like, in terms of analyzing the actual game that is Metroid Prime 4, this might be the final one for a little bit. I do think I'm going to take a stab at rewriting the story, doing the Spiteri cut on Metroid Prime 4. We'll see when I can get that done, but this is kind of winding down for now, so enjoy it, or look forward to the end. I don't know, whatever your opinion may be. But we do have some Metroid Prime news, but not Metroid Prime 4, in fact. Metroid Prime 2, and this might have actually even been out last week. I can't remember, but there was an ad at Wal-Mart that had a listing for NSO games that were available on Nintendo Switch Online, and you've got all the games that were there, but very curiously, there were 2 games listed on this ad that are not a part of NSO yet. And the first was Pikmin 2, an absolutely fantastic game. The second was Metroid Prime 2, and naturally that got a lot of people very, very excited at the possibility of Metroid Prime 2 coming to NSO and being available for fans to play. I was pumped as well. I was like, oh sweet, like they're pulling the trigger on this. It's about time. But that was not to be. It was not the case, unfortunately. And in a very rare move, Nintendo actually comes out and comments on this, and here we go. So the statement from Nintendo says, quote, "We recently provided a retailer with an image of Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo Classic titles that incorrectly included games that are not planned for release at this time. The image has been removed, and we apologize for any confusion." I can't remember the last time, like, I feel like Nintendo never comments on stuff, like, very rarely, unless it's, like, obviously, like, the big the big issues, like when the Switch 2 pricing was announced and you kind of had Doug Bowser doing damage control and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, they kind of came out here and just said, like, this was a mistake. I believe them. Like, that can definitely happen. But I wouldn't necessarily say that, like, I could totally see a direct coming, I don't know, in the next couple months, and like this game is just shadow dropped, or frankly, it's just shadow dropped on a random day as well. So like, I do think that, like, you know, maybe the time isn't right now, but I think it's coming.
Keyword at this time. I believe him. Sure, I believe him, but I think these games are coming eventually. I'd be stunned if these games don't come. Like, I feel like maybe Pikmin 2, maybe you wait a little bit longer, since technically you do already have a port on the Switch 1. Maybe you know, there's some sort of, like, I don't know, Pikmin 4 Switch 2 Deluxe Edition, and you know, that gives a little bit more promotion to Pikmin 2, so you want to get a little bit more sales on that before you put you know, the old Pikmin 2 on NSO. Prime 2, I feel like these are both given eventually. It's hard to say whether or not this was a promo that was released early, or if, you know, it was a promo that was just kind of put together and then they accidentally put games that, you know, they haven't started developing or announcing yet. It's hard to say either way, but I think regardless which way you look at it, I'm fairly confident both of these are going to be coming to NSO relatively soonish. However, you know, give or take, you know, however you interpret that.
So the question, I guess, is, do you skip Metroid Prime coming to NSO? And I think it makes sense if you skip it, because then you're encouraging people to potentially go and purchase Metroid Prime Remastered, which you know, I mean, it's still fairly, like, it's a cheap game comparatively speaking to other first party titles, but I don't remember off the top of my head any sequel, like a direct sequel, that just bypassed the original game. Like in Super Nintendo, for example, like they released Donkey Kong, then Donkey Kong Country 2, and then Donkey Kong Country 3, specifically in that order. And there's a lot of other examples like that. Whereas, yeah, I get, like, I think it makes sense to bypass Metroid Prime and just put Metroid Prime 2 on, but, and I guess you could say the same for Pikmin as well, because the first Pikmin is not available on NSO either. So do these sequels kind of supersede the originals that come before them? What do you think?
Yeah, it's I don't think that's far-fetched at all. I think it makes sense. And also I do eventually see, like, Metroid Prime 1 coming eventually. I would imagine it would kind of be similar to where Link's Awakening Game Boy, which technically the Game Boy NSO didn't even launch until after the Link's Awakening remake on Switch. But, like, you know, even then, like, you know, you had a bit of distance between the remake and then you release the original. I could see something with Metroid Prime as well, where it's like, hey, let's get the new game that people can't play on the Switch just yet. Let some more time pass, and then put the original Metroid Prime 1 as well, so you can have both the remastered and the original untouched version too.
And it's worth noting, Doom, you'll have to keep me honest here. Is Super Mario Sunshine on NSO yet? I don't think it's been, right?
So it hasn't been released on NSO, but it was announced during the Switch 2 Direct.
That's right, yeah. I was asking because, like, if you're a Wal-Mart employee, like, in the original NSO announcement trailer, there is a kind of a slew of games that are said, like, these are coming soon. No date is given, but, like, the very first title that kicks it off is Super Mario Sunshine. You've got Pokemon XD, which is definitely not there yet. Fire Emblem, Super Mario Strikers, Chibi Robo, Luigi's Mansion, Pokemon Coliseum. Those have all made it, but, like, you do have two titles right there in this announcement that, like, if you're a Walmart employee, you could have just pulled those guys and put them on the panel if you needed to fill a couple spots, I guess. So it is, like, a very specific, like, inclusion, and a weird one, right? I think. Yeah.
And it should also be noted that, like, we have several precedents of Nintendo releasing a game that wasn't in their initial release slate in the NSO, including for GameCube, most notably Wario World, which got dropped in December. That was not a part of the announced titles that they announced in the Switch 2 Direct. So it's absolutely possible that they could, you know, they could slip Prime 2 or Pikmin 2 in before that full slate has been fully released as well.
So I gotta say, by the way, I played a couple minutes of Wario World. Really fun game. But man, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is like one of the only Fire Emblem games that kind of escaped me because I wasn't like super into Fire Emblem in the early 2000s. I'm playing this game on the GameCube. This game kicks ass. It is so awesome. I know that some people think Fire Emblem is like this lame series just because like all these characters get into Super Smash Bros. And I get it, okay? I didn't want Byleth or anything like that in Smash either, but like these games are incredible. They are so great, and this one in particular is like, this one is really awesome. This is like a top like 5 at least Fire Emblem game that I'm playing. So anybody that is looking for something to play, you should check out Path of Radiance because it's really awesome so far.
Yeah, I know you've been really enjoying and posting about that a lot. So I don't know, maybe you might nudge me to try it out. Although I've heard that maybe this is like a tougher entry for like a new Fire Emblem to get into, and then maybe I should stick with Awakening for my introduction.
You know, I think that like this one certainly is a little bit more challenging, but you have like save states that can kind of offset that if you're looking for that. So yeah, I think that like this one would be a fine Fire Emblem to try out just to get like kind of the basics down. The story gets pretty intense around like the halfway point, which is where I'm at right now, and it's very close to real world, let's just say. So go in prepared for that. But yeah, so Metroid Prime 2 coming soon, maybe not at this time though, that's for sure. All right, it is time to definitively rank the areas of Metroid Prime 4, and there's not like a ton of different areas here, but I do think that we have a lot of meat on the bone for the areas that we do have. So we're going to go through, we're going to talk about all the pros and cons of all of these different areas, and eventually we are going to get a final ranking, and we're going to do this in what we call definitive ranking style. So we're going to start off with the first area that you go to, Fury Green, and we're going to talk about its pros and cons. We'll move on to the next area, and we'll put that at either the number 1 spot or number 2 spot. When we get to the third area, we'll put it either at number 1, 2, or 3, etc., etc. So I think that what we should do is, so Chrono Tower is going to be its own area, and I guess like we should just include the shrines as part of Soul Valley. I feel like that makes sense. And I don't think that we should rank the intro area, which name is escaping me right now.
UTO Research Center.
Yeah, I mean we could if you want to. Like it's up to you.
I think we should. I mean, it's about the same kind of content from Chrono Tower. I think we should.
Oh, okay. Sure. Well, I guess we should start there then. The UTO Research Center, and you know, like you gave me flack on the Great Metroid Area ranking for where the Frigate Orpheon ended up. I would not say that this is better than Frigate Orpheon. I would not say that this is better than. I would not say that it's better than, I guess, like the Olympus is where you start off in Metroid Prime 3. But I wouldn't say it's like terrible either. Like to be fair, like you have a pretty fun boss fight with Abrax. You have like, you know, like a really cool setting. There's explosions, there's cannons going off. It looks awesome. You've got the golems. So I do think that this area does have something. A lot of it is visually, but you are in the middle of a firefight, and you know, it is like a pretty intense situation that you've kind of found yourself in. You do have the disadvantage that there's not really any exploration or items for you to pick up. There's one energy tank, but yeah, you know, you do have a perfectly fine intro boss fight. You've got the really cool Silex scene. So I think like this area is fine. I would say it's going to end up on the lower tier of the ranking here, but I mean, like visually, I mean this again, like you could say this for every single area. I think like visually it really looks spectacular.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, you know, the cutscene, you know, when we all saw, you know, the opening cutscene, like all of our collective jaws were dropped, you know, earlier last year after that Switch 2 presentation. So, visually, like this is getting full marks. And yeah, otherwise, you know, it's a fine tutorial entrance, and to be fair, it's not trying to be anything else really. It's trying to provide a quick and easy tutorial, and just to set up what the rest of the game is going to be, and I think it succeeds in doing that. But other than the visuals, I don't think it does really a spectacular job by any means, and it's also, again, not fair to it because it's not trying to be. It's also very short as well,
Yeah.
which I think is the correct choice. But when you're individually ranking the areas, that does come into play as well. And then I know you didn't care about it at all, but like, especially on my hard mode playthrough, I have to put my hand down and say that the voice acting in this area is the worst of the entire game. I actually hate the voice acting from like pretty much all the Federation troops in this area way more than I do the voice acting in the rest of the game. It aggravated me. I don't want to say, maybe aggravated is harsh, but I would so many moments where I was just rolling my eyes, and eventually I just had to like tune all that stuff out as I was plowing through. But
Right.
either way, I don't think at the end of the day it's gonna really change my opinion, voice acting or not, and my thoughts of the area.
Yeah, I can't even like remember the voice acting. I know there's the one guy that tells you how to use your map and like your scan or whatever. I can't say that the voice acting bugged me one way or the other. It was like basically the same level as Metroid Prime 3, but like, I don't know. It certainly didn't do anything to me to warrant like taking points off. I will give this kind of points though for being one of the only place that you get to interact with space pirates. I thought that was cool as well. And
Yeah, that is true.
and like, say what you will, but like the scene where like, I don't know if we should count the opening cutscene as part of this area, but if you do, I mean
fair.
that's a big boon that you can get this, or that you could give UTO Research Center as well. So maybe it won't finish in the bottom part of the list. I don't know. All right, well, let's move on. So Samus has defeated Abrax, showed off with Silex. Silex shoots, he misses. Samus fires him and just absolutely cripples him for the entire duration of the events of Metroid Prime 4. And now we have been transported to the planet Vuros. And where do we end up? In the beautiful Fury Green, which I think is like a good area. I think it's a good area, but I don't think it's a great area. So let's talk about the positives. I think it's probably got the best music of any area. And that may be just because like we have heard it the most of all of the different areas, but it does have really, really like strong music. But the area, like, and actually some others. I mean, obviously the visuals are incredible, as they are everywhere. And, a benefit for this area is that it has lower scans in it. So that is unfortunately, something that a lot of these other areas don't have. So it's got that. You're frequently coming back here. You're going to base camp. You're going to the Altar of Legacy. So, like, on the surface, like, this area should have a lot going for it. And there's some pretty cool areas. I think the chase with that little bug at the beginning, whose name I forget, was cool.
It's Candon.
It certainly looks like him, doesn't it? But I feel like something in this area just like it doesn't quite do it for me. And I think it's because this area is like really small. And like maybe it's like I think it has the bridge, which is an incredible set piece. So like you go on the Infinity Bridge, and like, yes, you have Miles, but I think that's really like the most memorable thing about this area. It really feels small, and I guess it like really isn't that much smaller than Talon Overworld was, but it seems like it for some reason to me. And I think that the items that you get here, like they're the fundamentals, but they're not necessarily exciting items. Like you've got your bombs, you've got your missiles, and you've got your psychic glove, which I guess is a new item. The control beam is definitely one of the newer things that you can grab. But I think the thing that really does in this area for me is two things. I think the boss is like, I would say like, okay, as we talked about a few weeks ago. And like, I think, and this is a critique that I have for a lot of areas, but like, I think that like there's just so little for you to do when you come back. which wouldn't be a big deal, except you got to come back here like a lot to go to base camp to deposit your green crystals. So like it would be kind of nice if there was something that you could do. And like, yes, I know that there is the sacred flame ceremony room where like you can use the 3 different beams and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. It's I don't feel strongly about this area, which is funny because I would have thought that this would have been my favorite area. And I think a lot of that is because of like what you don't get. Like you don't get any like real explanation of like what the memory fruit is or the great big tree. Does it work like it does in Avatar? Does it not? I have no idea. Like, I don't know. What do you think, Doom?
So first off, I did want to point out, Samus first gets transported to Chrono Tower, not Fury Green. She gets transported to Fury Green after her little Chrono Tower excursion, but I digress. Otherwise, I pretty much agree with everything you just said there. I think Fury Green's a good area. It's got a lot of good things going for it, but a lot of things holding it back from, becoming an all-time classic Metroid area for me. And I was really thinking about this, because obviously, Talon Overworld is the obvious comparison to Fury Green. It's clearly inspired by Talon Overworld and trying to evoke a similar sensation that a first-time player would be stepping into Talon. And I think visually it knocks it out of the park on that front. But I think there's, and we've talked about this in the podcast before, but the level design in the game design, it's very narrow. It's very point A to point B. There's not a lot of interconnectivity, not a lot of signposting on, it's very there's one way in. Well, I guess technically there's two ways in later in the game, but like you start at one point, you end at another point, and that's pretty much the majority of your experience. There's no revisits where you're exploring like a new quadrant of the map. There's really only one time where you go to the undergrowth where you first meet Miles and you circle around the tree. That's really the only kind of time where you're circling back in on a previously explored path, and it's like it's a short circle, and then that's it. That's pretty much all you're doing for that. And I think, and this is kind of a critique I hold with all of Prime 4's areas, but when I think of not Talon Overworld, but Talon 4 in Metroid Prime, Talon 4 is a character in that game. It's a character with rich history that you're learning about. And you look at Talon 4 completely different when you fly away than when you came in. And with Vuros feels like levels, not characters. Some of the levels I think are really fun and engaging, including Fury Green, but at no point would I consider Fury Green a character the way I would like a Talon Overworld. And I think that is that character is what's going to prevent a lot of these areas maybe from reaching like my highest threshold when I think of like all-time Metroid areas.
Yeah, I think like another issue that this area has, and a lot of areas have as well, is just due to the nature of the layout. So for example, like if I'm coming back at the end of the game, I've got my power bombs, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm coming back to Fury Green, and I'm going to sweep the area 100%, and I land in the cargo launcher room. It takes forever to get to the quiet clearing at the other side of the map where the statue is that I need to powerbomb to get my powerbomb expansion. And not only that, but like there are at least a dozen grievers that I need to either run past or defeat on my way to get there. So I do think like the shortcuts would have desperately, I think, helped the map here feel a little bit more interconnected and a little bit more. And like some areas do have this, to be fair. But Fury Green, I feel like does not. And like, yes, I know you can get there through Soul Valley to this quiet clearing, but my point is that there's just like, if you want to go from like point A to point B, there's really not a great way for you to do that. And I know that some other Metroid areas have famously done that before. I think we've all got the artifacts from Findrana Edge into Findrana, like the other side of the world, basically, in the area. But this one feels a little bit egregious to me. I would say for Fury Green, like, I mean, it's definitely a higher area than UTO Research Center. Like, that is clear.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I will advocate for it going forward on our list, necessarily.
I unfortunately might have to agree. And again, that's not to say that Fury Green is a bad area. I certainly would not call it that. I think it has a lot of things going for it. I think it has a lot of memorable rooms. Like if we're talking about individual rooms in Fury Greens, like there are, so like you just mentioned, like quiet clearing, the Infinity Bridge that you mentioned before. Even when you're not fighting the Grievers, just like the vista, even in spite of being like a 2D backdrop, like still looks just absolutely phenomenal. And you still have, you can look back and see like other areas you visited in the distance, or like the cargo launcher that you're about to visit in the future. You can see the Chrono Tower way off in Soul Valley. There's so many like cool views and pieces of art like throughout this area. A lot of really nice music pieces. Obviously, the highlight for most people is going to be that main Fury Green theme. I actually really like the initial theme when you first teleport in, that kind of has little hints of that leitmotif but doesn't fully develop. I really like that soft piece of music when you first get introduced, but yeah, it doesn't quite have that connective tissue that makes the area feel like its own unique character. And yeah, that's why I think I agree with you.
Well, let us move on to the next area, which is Volt Forge. And I think we could come out and just say, like, this is, of the three areas, definitely the best one. For sure.
Oh yeah, that we've talked about so far.
That we've
Yeah,
talked about,
absolutely.
yeah. It's got a lot going for it. It's got a really strong boss, as we talked about. Zelios is really fun. And plus, you've got the Silex 2 and Silex 1 fights, so, like, really, really strong boss fights in this area. Like, I will say the Silex 2 and 1 boss fights are a little bit deflated for me because of what we talked about, the reveal of those. Actually, so I saw somebody call them like Psylux, like the PSY, and I think that's a great name. But like you've got the whole area has like a really cool theme. I really like how you can go down and then come back up, and then it's completely different once you kind of turned on the power to the place. It does have shortcuts to get you from the bottom of the tower to the top of the tower. There is a valid reason for returning to this area. I really like the gimmick of building Viola when you go here, and I think like the racetracks are really fun. Actually, like they might seem a little goofy on first glance, but like I feel like even in the context of the lore of this world, like it kind of makes sense to have like a license certification program for all these Lemorne driving Viola around. So, yeah, I think that the design is cool too. Like I do like vertical levels. They're definitely challenging to map, but it gives you something a little bit different and a little bit more. I don't know, like just a different flavor than a lot of these other areas here, which are fairly straight shot one way to the next. And of course, it's got that pulsating musical track that just is relentless as it plays over your time in Volt Forge. I know that it could be a little bit too much for some people, but I really like that track as well. It gives it a little bit of a personality. So I think that this is like a strong area. I wouldn't necessarily say for me personally it's probably my top of the list, but I would say it's got to be up there for this game.
Absolutely. Yeah, so when we first talked about Vault Forge last month, I proclaimed it that this is an all-timer Metroid area for me. Playing it again on my hard mode, I unfortunately have to retract that statement. I think playing it, knowing the surprises in advance and having a better understanding of the mapping, I am starting to see more of like more critiques that I have with the area. Still a great area. I will say, art direction wise, I think can absolutely be nominated for like some of the series best. The art in this area is absolutely incredible. Like both when the power is off and when you turn the power on, and how it just completely relights the environment, reshadows everything, and just like everything that the art alone does to recontextualize everything on your descent and ascent, like phenomenal. Atmosphere wise, like this area is firing on all cylinders. I think gameplay wise though, as I played on hard mode, I definitely have a bit more critiques with the area. I still don't mind the verticality, especially in Tower
Hmm.
1. I actually think that it gives the area some unique character. I do think Tower 2 can be extremely grating, though, because really Tower 2 at its core is just a long combat gauntlet without any sort of puzzles other than like turning on the generator, which you've already done in Tower 1. But otherwise, it is just fight after fight after fight, and relentless in a way that feels more tedious than fun or exhilarating, like in the way that Tower 1 does. And then Tower 3, has the racetrack, has Zelios, which,
Hmm.
are great, especially Zelios, but that's really all Tower 3 has going for it. You don't really have
Well,
much else
and the
besides
great
the other.
racetrack. Okay,
Yeah.
let's not drop
It's
shade
a
on
it's
that.
a, it's a great racetrack. I'm just saying that your time in Tower 3 is fairly limited. You're not doing that much in Tower 3. What you are doing is awesome, but you're not going to be having as much of an extended stay there as you are with the first couple of towers. And so that's definitely in my grand calculus of great Metroid areas has definitely lowered it quite significantly. But as far as Prime 4 is concerned, though, I still think very strong overall. And again, like in terms of like the atmosphere, the art, the music, absolutely phenomenal.
So yeah, like I would say that this is like clearly number one for what we have ranked so far, and then Fury Green is two, and UTO Research Center would be number three. I'm Let's go over to the ice belt because I'm curious to see, and I want you to go first because I've went first on the last couple, but I think like the general consensus that I have seen among Metroid fans is that this is the strongest area in the game. Is what I have seen from other accounts, from like people on Blue Sky, and I'm not even necessarily pushing back on that narrative either. But it's worth noting too. This is the first area that you really have like kind of story and Federation trooper interaction as well. So I'm curious to see where this would land on your ranking as we have it right now.
This spell is interesting. I think I would put it over Vault Forge, but it's really interesting because if we're going back to like the like art direction and the music, I still give that to Vault Forge like 100%. I think Vault Forge wins in a 1v1 on that point. I feel like to me, Ice Belt is the most consistent area from start to finish of
Hmm.
all the Metroid Prime 4 areas. Like I don't necessarily think I'm not sure if it has, other than like a couple moments here and there, I don't think it has like the strongest highs that some of the areas might have, but I also don't think it has anywhere near some of like the worst lows the game has either. I think overall it's just a very nice consistent experience, at least for me. I don't know if Dak would agree with that if he was on this episode, but I
Dak
think
doesn't like anything.
consistency.
Okay, I
Right.
actually don't know other than racing. Whatever he races, I don't know what he likes. So that's okay.
But I would say Ice Belt for me is probably the most consistent area in Metroid Prime 4. Um, there's a lot of stuff about this area. When it comes to the music, most people talk about like, much like Volt Forge, the music when you turn the generator on, and I'll get to that in a second, but my favorite piece of music in this game is actually when you're outside of the lab. It's no one ever mentions this piece of music, but I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces in the game. It doesn't evoke the same feelings as like Phendrana Drifts at all, where it's like Phendrana is like kind of like, ushering you in just kind of this beauty and this importance of like the site that you visited. And then like
Hmm.
Icebell, it starts to do that, but there's these twinges of like minor chords that like make you feel like you're stumbling into something sinister while also like kind of taking in the natural beauty of the outside. And I really love what was done with the that outskirts track. But the generator track is actually really interesting for me because I overall I really like the soundtrack, but I definitely have some critiques with it, and that generator theme is actually one of them. On its own, I really like the generator theme, but I don't think for the long, I think in the moment it's great, but I think for the long term, as you ascend back through the ice belt long term, I don't think it appropriately identifies the mood that I would have liked to have felt going in, because like you're going back up through Ice Belt, all the cryopods are melting, the grievers are breaking out, and to me I feel like it should be a very tense moment, almost very similar to like the Xeno Research Lab in Prime 3, but it doesn't feel that. It's very action movie like. It's very like there's no sort of tension built up with the music. It's just like a very fun piece of music to listen to. And again, I think in the context of the generator room alone it works, but as you're ascending back up through the facility, I actually think it kind of takes away from that sequence, in my opinion. And so I don't know if I would have had that play throughout that whole ascent back up. Regardless, still a fun ascent. There's some fun combat. A phenomenal morph ball tunnel that I'm definitely going to be shouting out on a surprise future episode. Whenever we get around to that. But yeah, there's some phenomenal morph ball tunnels in this area, and I always love a good tunnel in a Metroid Prime game.
Where would you rank it among the three that we have right now? I guess let's say 4, because this is going to be the 4th entry.
Right. Yeah, so like I said, I think overall I'm putting it above Volt Forge just because I think it's more consistent than that area, even though I think Volt Forge has the bigger highs. So I could really go either way on it. I'm not going to fight hard on it, but I think for me personally, I think it edges Volt Forge a little bit.
Yeah, I'm still unsure, actually, to be honest with you, because I do think that this area is really cool, for sure. Like, I feel like it feels like the most is happening to advance the story in this area. And again, it is like one of the only areas in this game. We didn't talk about this in Volt Forge. Volt Forge has zero lore to be found. Like, yes, it's got some scams, but like there's really not a lot that is advancing the story here. Whereas, like, obviously you go to Ice Belt and maybe you've inferred this already, maybe you haven't, but like you kind of get the scene of like, these grievers used to be Lemorn, and something has happened that has caused them to be Lemorn. And as you learn a little bit, it's because you learn that it's because of the psychic crystals and the green energy and all that kind of stuff. And I do think that it has some really cool set pieces as well. Like, it's got the snowfield, which I think is really great, and that wolf scene is really, really awesome. One of the high points of the game. I think that the biolabs, it does feel a little bit it feels a little bit on the nose for the labs that you saw in Phendrana, and to be honest, a little bit on the nose with Skytown as well, but still pretty cool. It's missing that dangerous element, like you don't see the Metroids behind the glass, but still pretty cool. The rest of the area I think is fine. Like, there's the cliffside, which I think is like really compelling. There's a lot of really cool expansions to be found here as well, which, not for nothing. And like you do get a bunch of items here. You get your lasso, your boost ball, your spider ball, your ice chip. So like it's got that going for it. I think Keratos kind of brings it down a little bit for me. Like, the boss is fine, but I would say just fine. I don't think on the level of a couple other bosses like we discussed a couple weeks ago. So I wasn't really sure what to do with this. I will be honest. I was leaning towards putting it under Volt Forge, and I think the reason why is I just kind of feel like Volt Forge is a more unique concept, where I look at Ice Belt and I'm like, it's the ice level. We've had a lot of ice levels before. We'll probably have a lot in the future as well. And this is another fine ice level. Whereas like Volt Forge may, as like an area, not be like quote unquote better than it, but I'm like, this is like a motorcycle factory, and I kind of think that's cool, and it kind of has like a little Matrix vibe going on. So I'm a little bit conflicted on this one.
If I'm going purely vibes based, like Volt Forge wins hands down. Like that. I don't even have to think about that. If we're just like if I'm just like thinking about it like for a brief moment and putting it in a bottle, like I give it to Volt Forge. But like if I really critically and think analytically and think hard about it, just based on what I like, I think Ice Belt is just a little bit more consistent. Like I said, I'm not gonna fight it either way because I think both areas have a lot of things going for them, and then Volt Forge, like I said, I think has the highest peaks by far.
Well, I think that then we should rank Ice Belt at number 2, and maybe give Volt Forge a little bit of love on this show. What do you think about that?
I'm fine with that. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, let's talk about Flare Pool. This
I'm not a fan of this area. I'll just
I'm not
get
a big
that
fan
out of the way
either,
right off the bat.
to be honest. Yeah.
I think this might be my, which is funny because like Feneros is my favorite boss of the game, but otherwise, and I think the escape sequence is good, but otherwise, man, I can't really think of like anything else that this area really has going for it that like stands out to me. It is.
You know what? Let me play devil's advocate, because there is a few cool things. I will like just say it. Like I agree with you. This probably isn't one of my favorite areas, but I do think, like, first and foremost, you've got Viola IC, which looks really cool. Like ripping around on lava in Viola, like that. You have got the sequence with Armstrong and Duke where the Silex is piloting that gunship and he's shooting at you and you kind of got to fight it off on the bridge. Like that's a pretty cool scene, I think. Feneros wasn't my favorite boss, but like I thought that was still like the presentation of it. I thought was really cool as well, and I like the behemoth fight for like what it is. It's a nice little mini boss. And you know what? Like the shot, like the room that you go into, the lava lake bridge, like that might be the most impressive room in the game, just visually speaking. It looks like Bark-Dur from Lord of the Rings. Like it looks crazy.
With a giant cannon in the background.
Yeah, but I agree. Like I think that like this area is it's a big hallway, which can be fine. Like that, not every Metroid area I don't think needs to wrap around and connect and stuff like that. There is room for both, but I just think that what's actually in the hallways is like typically not that engaging. It's very similar to what you just did in Ice Belt after you turn the generator on. Like, you've got a hot bunch of rooms, like a bunch of mechanical, I don't know what you'd call them, like studies or research places, like whatever. It's not that inspiring. Like, I think for a fire area, it doesn't feel that fiery to me a lot of the times. You know what I mean?
It simultaneously doesn't, and at the same time feels way too much like Magmoor Caverns, all at the same time.
Yeah,
which is kind of an achievement in and of itself, but not in a positive way, unfortunately. Yeah, this area, I don't know if stinker is the right word, but it definitely is the one that like gave me it left less of an impression on me than any of the other areas.
Yeah.
And not in a good way. Not in a good way either. Again, Feneros is my favorite fight in the game. I still stand by that. I think that is a terrific boss battle, terrific set piece. The escape sequence, while I wish we could have played as Samus finishing the escape, the actual gameplay that we got to do during that escape sequence, pretty awesome. Love the grapple beam utilization,
yeah,
especially during those couple of those chasms that you cross. Yeah, other than that, though, because here's the thing, all of the levels in Metroid Prime 4 are very point A to point B. There's not a lot of wraparound, but, even then, at least, even in Great Minds, which we'll talk about next, at least there's twists and turns. You're curving, you're changing direct. Here, it is literally you are going forward until you hit the tram, and then you kind of do like a little bit of a left turn, but that's about it. That is the most change of direction that you are doing in Flare Pool. It is about as straight line as you can go, and it would be one thing if at least the rooms themselves, each room like really stood out, where it's like, okay, the actual progression is fairly linear, but the things we're doing in these rooms, I'm stopping and engaging with these puzzles, but you don't really do a lot of that, and that's something that I can at least give to Vault Forge, despite a lot of the elevators, is like a lot of those rooms in and of themselves really stand out, and like are like standout moments of the game. And you're spending a lot of time in these rooms trying to figure out how to work your way through each puzzle that it contains. You're not really doing that in Flare Pool. It's again just a lot of linear combat from start to
It's
finish.
a lot of Cybots too. Like a
yeah,
crazy amount.
maybe an occasional spinner device, but that's about the extent of like the puzzles that you're doing in Flare Pool. And also, I talked about this before, and again, I'll go more in depth when we do definitive ranking. I feel like the music up till Ice Spell in this game, in my opinion, is really strong, and then after that, it really starts to taper off, and you really feel it in Flare Pool, where for lack of a better word, I like to call it Magmore Caverns core. It's not Magmore Caverns, but it is at the same time. But
even
so
less,
it just kind of,
it's less fiery than Magmore Caverns, but like you're right. It's somehow both at the same time, and it's just, it's a curious area because there is like some cool stuff that happens here, but I think it's just like I talked about with Ice Belt, it is so tough, and you could say this about Fury Green too, actually, but like, man, it's just like, here's the fire level. We got another fire level. We've had Magmore. We've had Brio, we've had Norfair, we've had Sector 3, we've had Sector 3 again, another M. Like how many fire areas do we need? And if you're gonna do a fire area, like, man, you gotta make it distinct, and this is just not distinct. So I think it's like even lower than maybe it should be, even with the cool set pieces, the cool boss, just because it's very unambitious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it like again, I think when it peaks, the couple of times in my opinion where it peaks, it's some of my favorite peaks in the game. But yeah, other than that, it is quite a valley.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's obvious we're ranking this below Fury Green.
I would rank it below Fury Green.
Do we? The question is, do we rank it above or below UTO? I think that's the real question.
No,
I personally would. I still put it above UTO, but like I don't know.
No, I would too. Like there is enough cool stuff going on here that I think you got to rank it above your tutorial area of the game, for lack of a better word, right? Like the boss is definitely better. The area and the set pieces, I think elevated above that. I could even have the conversation like Flare Pool would be better than Fury Green, but I think that's more so an indictment on how I feel about Fury Green that it is like I feel strongly about Flare Pool, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like I am fine with it above UTO. I think that's a fine spot. I will say I don't think that UTO should finish last though. I do have an area that I would put below it. Okay.
I can think of a couple areas.
Well, let's go on. And let's talk about the Great Minds. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first? Because to probably not your surprise, I'm going to advocate for this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to hear your pitch for it. Yeah, because I think your pitch could definitely influence. It's definitely not going to be at the top of my list, but your pitch could influence where I want to put it. So
I personally think this is the best area in the game. For a couple of reasons, and I will acknowledge what I think everyone is going to scream at me about right away. Yeah, this is a hallway. It's a straight shot. There's not really any room off the beaten path. You got to go through, and you got to just do this area in complete linearity. And I think that's fine. Like, honestly and truly, I do. Like, I think that there are certain areas in Metroid where if you just follow the path, that's totally fine. Metroid Fusion is a game that you basically just do that. Like, the whole entire game until, like, the last, 20% of it. Like, I really don't have a problem with that when it is done correctly. And the difference, I feel like, between this and Flare Pool is, like, Flare Pool is not done correctly. And it's, like, that level of fatigue that is also working against Flare Pool. But, like, I feel like when you talk about the Great Minds, the obviously, I think the first natural thing that you think of is like Phase on Mines, and you're like, this is just gonna be kind of a retread of that. And I think like after you get to Ice Belt and you get to Flare Pool, I'll speak for myself. I was really just like, oh my god, I just went through Phendrana and Magmore. I'm gonna go through something exactly the same as Phase on Mines, and I like there are some similarities to be sure, but like I think that this was just like a really different experience than what I was expecting. It had a lot of great set pieces involved. Like I think like, you know, say what you will about like the whole sacrifice deal, but like in that moment it was pretty cool. And like, yes, we knew that they were coming back, but and still it was pretty cool like to see like the clever gimmick of the sound attracting the grievers. This area actually reminded me a lot of Lord of the Rings and like the Mines of Moria. Like it had a lot of similar characteristics where like if you're making noise, you're attracting orcs. It had like, especially in the third layer, it had that really cool kind of like glowing green, like green energy that gave it a really ominous feel. It also reminded me a lot of Aliens as well, the James Cameron Alien, where there's all of these eggs for all these grievers around. So it's got a sense of danger to it. And you do have to be cognizant everywhere that you go that like you can attract grievers to you at any second. I think that there's the mine shafts, like there's 3 of them in here, and I think like all 3 of them look incredible. Like they look like the bridge of Khazak Doom, basically, like when the Fellowship is running across. And I just think like the atmosphere was really cool. Like it was an air of danger. It was an air of unpredictability, and I really enjoyed the set pieces. Like when you are defending Armstrong as she's cutting through that door, and like you've got grievers coming at you. I thought that was great. When you are defending Armstrong and Duke, and you've got the grievers, and you're trying to drill the hole in the ground to get to the lower level, I thought that was great. Even View, I thought that scene was kind of cool when he just yeeted you across the valley to the other side. So, like, I thought that this area was just, like, really consistently strong. There's not a lot of items that you can get. There's just the super missiles. But there is some really cool expansions that you can come back afterwards and get. And obviously, it doesn't hurt that you've got the best boss in the game as your kind of finale here in the Omega Griever. So I personally would say that this area is top of the pile for me. Willing to negotiate, willing to compromise, but I think that this is like, you know, as far as my expectations were going in, I won't lie, they were kind of low at this point, but I thought that this area was like really able to surpass it. And when I was playing on hard mode, I wasn't like super stoked, if I'm being totally honest, to like get to Ice Belt or get to Flare Pool, but I was like, Sam, to my wife, like you got to come and watch the Great Mines because I think you would think it's cool and I think you'd think it's interesting. And so like I didn't feel that way about a lot of the other areas in the game. So I thought that the gimmick of the area was strong. I thought that the presentation, just like the general aesthetic, was like the creepiest in Metroid. It at times it was like playing The Last of Us. At times it was like playing Alien. At times it felt like I was playing Lord of the Rings, and I think it culminates with a great boss fight. So yeah, this would be my pick for number 1.
Yeah, I don't know. This area just didn't do a lot for me. It didn't do anything. It didn't do anything bad. I would say like maybe Flare Pool did, but like I don't know. It just, yeah. I thought outside of a handful of, I think the crystal rooms in the Great Mines.
Oh, the best looking
stellar.
save station in the game, by the way.
Oh yeah, right before the Omega Griever, fantastic. Yeah, I love the crystal rooms. Otherwise, I feel like I get that it's an abandoned mine setting and it does limit what you can do, but I still feel like you can do a lot of really creative stuff within an abandoned setting. I mean, you know, you have GFS Valhalla, which literally reuses a ton of assets from the Olympus, and I feel like that area is a really creative way to do an abandoned setting, or the wrecked ship from Super Metroid, which also has absolutely phenomenal art direction in my opinion, or even Crash Frigate in in Metroid Prime 1, with underwater. Like I think there's but other than those crystal rooms, I feel like it art wise it's some of the weakest in the game. The combat the combat's good in this area. I wouldn't really, at least for me, I didn't think it was very tense. I just thought it was a lot of I don't know. I think combat wise, when you're doing the mini bosses, like what is it called, the Brute Griever, not the Omega Griever, but like the tier below it. Yeah, the Brute Grievers. I thought those guys were a lot of fun, especially when you especially if you go in there with the fully powered up shock beam, the electric shock, whatever it's called, the super thunder shot. That's what I'm thinking of. Yes, super thunder shot. A lot of fun to face those when you have that equipped. Item progression, I feel like the past couple of Metroid games have always had a kind of weird instance. Even Metroid Dread, which I absolutely adore, has some funky item progression in the middle, and I feel like this is where Prime 4 gets a little bit funky, putting super missiles and power bombs literally right next to each other. I feel like one of those should have been spaced out way earlier in the game. I actually, it's one of the rare instances where I actually don't mind power bombs being kind of the last item, because I feel like it has a little bit more utility in Prime 4 than in what it usually does. But I still feel like if you're gonna put these I feel like you shouldn't put two, super offensive weapons, back to back next to each other. But that's more of a minor nitpick than a real critique of the area itself.
I think that's a nitpick of like the game design more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not fair for the spider ball, because you do technically pick it up back in Ice Belt, but the majority of the use where you're not collecting items is here in the Great Mines. And I thought the spider ball usage here was especially weak compared to all three of the previous Metroid Prime games. The scene where you're crossing the initial bridge and Duke and Armstrong is like, "Yo, watch out, Samus, don't fall down." That was pretty cool, but like otherwise the spider ball just kind of falls flat for me in terms of its usage in this area, and so I found that to be pretty disappointing. It has a hell of a finisher, though, as we've talked about. The Omega Griever, it's your favorite boss. It's my second favorite boss, and again, even though it's my second favorite, I have zero critiques with that fight. It is fantastic, 10 out of 10, no notes. So it certainly finishes it off right, and I mean, hey, as far as this game concerned, ending off on a high note, I would say is a huge positive.
I want to make one mention of something super quick too that I just thought of as well. I was complaining earlier about how long it takes you to get from point A to point Z in Fury Green, and you could definitely say the same thing about Flare Pool. I do think that this area does give you a nice bit of like you can go to level 1, 2, or 3, or the surface right away, and like all of those areas are like somewhat self-contained. Like when I was doing my hard mode cleanup, I found it like way more manageable to get around in Great Mines than Flare Pool, for example, or even Fury Green.
100% agree. There are a couple of annoying expansions where you'll fall down a shaft and you can't get back up to the next level. And I didn't do it on my second playthrough on hard mode, but on my first playthrough, there was a couple where I wasn't paying close enough attention to my map, and by the time I fell through the shaft, I realized, oh, I missed a room back there with an expansion. Oh, now I have to go all the way to the level 2 elevator, go back up. So again, that's more of a nitpick than like a real critique of the area, because that's like more like post game stuff or like end game stuff than like when I'm thinking of the area, I'm critiquing like your initial visit of the area more than that. But that being said, like you're alluding to, having that little bit of fast travel between the levels, it is definitely, I would say, a huge benefit for that post game, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so the current ranking of our areas as it stands right now, Doom. Number 1 is Volt Forge, number 2 is Ice Belt, number 3 is Fury Green, number 4 is Flare Pool, and number 5 is UTO Research Center. If you were ranking Great Mines, where does it slot in on this list? And then we'll negotiate.
So if I'm ranking this to your chagrin, it goes between UTO and Fury Green. I'm definitely willing to negotiate.
Do you mean Flare Pool and Fury Green?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah.
That's insane. Okay.
Yeah. Flare Pool and actually, yeah. Flare Pool and Fury Green. Yeah. I literally forgot about that area. That should tell you what I think of that area. Yeah. I definitely be willing to negotiate to put it above Fury Green. I am gonna be. I don't know. I might find
this
a little
area
bit more
goes
putting it
above
over
Ice Belt for sure. For like, I just think like this area is like, I will be honest. I think this area is like far and away the best area. Like I don't think anything comes particularly close. I could compromise and put it under Volt Forge if you wanted to do that. I can appreciate maybe it didn't do it for you, but I can't look at the ice area, the forest area, and the fire area and say that Great Mines is any worse than either of those. I will say, like, to my point earlier, there is no lore that you find here, but I do think that you get some really, really nice character moments, particularly with Armstrong after Duke has, made his big sacrifice. I think that those moments were strong. So
I think that might be where our opinions really divulge, because I hated all that stuff. The only sacrifice, I don't want to say it tugged at my heartstrings, but the only sacrifice that made sense to me was the view sacrifice. Everyone else, it was just like, well, wait a minute, they're gonna come after you no matter what. Why are we sacrificing here? We've already established that they can go through the walls. And then on top of that, I don't hate Armstrong, but when she is mourning Duke's not death, it does feel very Other M-esque with like how melodramatic and over the top it is. And it wasn't, again,
you stop it with
not
that.
As bad as
You stop it
not
with
as
that
bad
nonsense.
as some of Other
That
M's
is
worst
not
moments.
Other M level. Frankly, nothing in this game is Other M level. Let's just call it as it is. Like, nothing touches Other M.
It is teetering. It's nowhere near some of Other M's worst moments, but it's teetering. It's definitely melodramatic, which Other M is. It's definitely it's creeping into that territory. So I can't say that I found like a lot of the self-contained stories there are very, very effective, for me at least. Whereas, at least in the moment with Ice Belt, I thought the Lemorne Griever lore was interesting, even though unfortunately it doesn't really develop any more past that, and there isn't really a satisfying payoff to that. In the moment, it feels pretty nice, I can say, at least with Ice Belt. So that's kind of where I stand on that, at least.
I think holistically, like, Ice Belt just doesn't do anything with, like, to be fair, Metroid Prime 4 doesn't do anything with this story, really, but, like, you kind of get the brunt of that in Ice Belt, whereas, like, I think, like, at least in the moment, again, like, what plays out in Great Minds, I think, is, like, as a self-contained area, like, it tells a really nice story from start to finish, and probably does the best job of any area about making you care about these goobers that you are supposed to protect here, which obviously informs the ending of the game. So, how about this? I feel like it should go below Volt Forge and above the other three areas, and I'll give you something back in a later area.
I don't even know. Oh, I don't know. I feel I'll just for the sake of speeding the episode on, because I don't want to get hung up on it too much. I'll concede there, but. Yeah.
Let's talk about Chrono Tower.
I wish I could rank this. I wish I could rank this higher, man. I wish I could, because again, there's another stellar piece of art direction. I would say, much like Vault Forge, some of the single best pieces of art in the game. Like, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely phenomenal. The main theme of Chrono Tower, again, a lot of people don't talk about it, but I love how mysterious and almost weirdly classical of a theme it sounds like, with its kind of combination of vibrato choirs, which I don't typically like in this game, but I think it really works here in this setting. So I really enjoy that. But and again, I think the first trip to Chrono Tower is super effective. Not to make an unintentional Pokemon reference, but I think the first trip to Chrono Tower, right before you go to Fury Green, fantastic. It's mysterious, sets you up for the adventure. Like it gives you a really good motivation. But obviously the second trip, and I'm not even getting into the final boss yet, but the second trip really just does not add anything. You're going through, technically you enter through a different level than you did, but honestly, like, the level that you enter on, it's pretty much almost identical to the one where you first start off on. Mm-hmm. And then you just scan a thing and you ride the elevator up, and there isn't really a lot done with the area. And you could argue, you could argue that that's pretty much the exact same as Impact Crater, and it's like, yeah, but I feel like Impact Crater, well, pun not intended, left a much larger impact on me, just because of how unsettling disgusting is and how ultimately relevant it became to that final fight. Whereas here, it's really hardly relevant at all, other than like, okay, Silex was secretly, staying here this whole time. But otherwise, really not super relevant at all, and you really don't get to spend a lot of time here. And so I feel like that second trip, again, even before getting into the final boss, really brings that area down for me, which is unfortunate because I think at the surface, and I think your first trip is awesome, and I love it. So
Let's just call it
yeah,
what it
I don't know
is.
fully.
This is the
Yeah.
worst area in the game by like a country mile. It's the worst prime final area by a country mile. Yeah, it looks really nice, but this is like it's like 6 rooms and it's a straight hallway.
Yeah.
And there's nothing going on. There is no lore. There is nothing of value. You have the Lamorne stuff everywhere, which really like nothing of substance in the story happens here, and you have one of the most awful final boss encounters, particularly in hard mode, that you will ever see in a Metroid game. And the best part of that final boss encounter doesn't even take place at Chrono Tower. It takes place in Final Destination and Parts Unknown in the corner of the universe. I was incredibly disappointed with this area. It's got lame music. It's got no enemies. It's got no scans. It's got nothing. This area has nothing. This is the worst. This would be like a contender for like the bottom of the list on the Great Metroid Area ranking. I really like it would be in that bottom, like in with some of the Federation Force levels, in with the Pyrosphere from Other M. This area I think is so poor. Like visually, it looks great. It looks great for sure. It's very feminine architecture, but I mean,
Yonic,
like
some would say.
Yes, some would say that. But I mean, like, come on, like we're the natural comparison here, like you said, is Impact Crater. It's Phase. Even like the Sky Temple is cooler than this. Like I think that this might even be worse than like Oubliette. Like at least Oubliette had like kind of a cool atmosphere
100%.
around
I
it.
100% agree. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it's worse than Doomseye. I don't know if I can say that, but like it's in the conversation, and I think that says everything. I think that this area is so poor, and it's so disappointing when you go in and you walk in and you're like, hey Silex, oh, you've been here the whole game. Oh, okay, cool, let's fight. And even like not even talk about the story, which takes place. The story just happens to take place in this area of the ending, so I don't want to hold that against this area. But like this area is just like there is nothing going on in this area, nothing. And I know that there is going to be some other people that might try and say that there is another area that's worse than this, but I am not here for it. This area I think is so disappointing to play the final stretch of the game.
I think that pretty accurately summarizes it. Do I think this is like a contender for the worst area in the Metroid series? I don't think so. I'm not going to go that far. Is it one of the most disappointing areas? Absolutely. Because I think, and again, I think it's like the dichotomy of the first and second trips between those two. And I think that's what really solidifies that disappointment. Because that first trip is so impactful, is so memorable, and does, it did, really like leave me in awe. Whereas the second trip, it's just a whole lot of nothing. It's no payoff at a time where the game desperately
it needs a
to
shot
pay
in the
something
arm.
off, and it just and it just does not. It completely falls flat. And so yeah, I think when you're looking at it as a whole, I can't say it's the worst area, but yeah, I think if we're having a conversation of like what are the most disappointing areas in Metroid, I think this absolutely makes the top of the list, 100%.
I think it's the bottom of the list. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think we have to put it there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the area that everyone has wanted us to talk about since we started this podcast. And that is Soul Valley. Now, I'm going to make my pitch and then I'm going to tell you where I would rank it, and then I'm going to lay out my only condition. I would personally rank Soul Valley above Fury Green and below Ice Belt. And I know that that's probably not going to be where you would rank it, but I do think that I do appreciate this area for what it is trying to do, and I do think that it has some very cool redeeming qualities. I think that the shrines included, which I guess are part of Soul Valley, I really like those. Like I think that they're cool little fun mini like distractions, I guess you'd say. I think that yes, they could have been more complex and more elaborate, but I mean, like, clearly they're going after the Breath of the Wild formula, and there's room to grow there, I think. None of them were too complex, but I like the fact that they're in the desert. I like the fact that you have Galactic Federation wreckage. I don't like the fact that there is no Galactic Federation lore. That was a big missed opportunity. But I do like the fact that there are items. They're not everywhere, but they're scattered in and around the desert to, like, at least give you something to go towards. Like, you don't usually have to go too far to get to a hidden missile expansion or an energy tank or a Viola boost tank or something to that nature. I do think that the combat in this area is very poor. I think Viola combat is rough, and I think the Varmus fight is kind of the epitome of that. And, like, yes, obviously we definitely have to talk about Miles. For me, like, I think, like, and if you feel differently, I feel like that's totally valid, but, like, for me, I almost view the Miles hint system as not a fault of Soul Valley, but, like, as a fault of Metroid Prime 4, the game in general, that I wouldn't peg on any area. You just hear it the most in Soul Valley, but, like, if you're in other places,
I agree with that.
You're still getting Miles, you know? But if you were to tell me, like, this area stinks because you just hear Miles over and over and over again, I mean, what am I going to say, right? Like, you're right. I think that the layout is cool. I like ripping around on Viola. I think that as like a concept, this is a really neat area. They didn't go all the way, though. Like, I think that there could have been, like, there really isn't a reason why there's not, like, more interactivity with Soul Valley. Like, there should at least be, like, a day and night cycle, or, like, consistent, like, green energy showers that are occurring. So, like, I could definitely see that criticism. I do think that you get some, like, really spectacular views in Soul Valley, like, like looking at like the tree or Volt Forge looks really cool. Actually, I think the Great Minds is, like, a really underrated set piece here as well. And I will say that I do think that there are some cool expansions that you can get here as well. Could there have been more in the desert? Like, yeah, totally. But I don't hate it. Like, I know what they were going for, and I kind of like the idea to have, like, these big open areas in Metroid. I know I'm probably not convincing you or anyone else that has kind of made up their mind about Soul Valley, and I'm not really trying to either. I'm just kind of saying what I like about it. There's definitely some things I would change. Like, I would have liked to see a lot more. You know that one expansion that you can get by, like, riding Viola and boosting, and then there's the missile in the dune that has, like, the circle in it.
After you pull the sick air, yeah.
Yeah. Like, where's some more of that stuff, right? Like, like, it's criminal that there's not, like, Galactic Federation logs or something that shows you this. Well, seemingly we had an entire research center be transported to Viros, and, like, about 10% of it made its way over. So, like, yes, it probably could have had some more stuff. But I don't know. Maybe I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt. But I think, like, as an area, I think it's totally fine. I personally enjoyed the swing, and maybe some would say a swing and a miss, but I enjoyed the swing over playing it safe for areas like Flare Pool, Fury Green, even Ice Belt to an extent, to be honest, but I wouldn't say this is better than Ice Belt. And I like the idea of the shrines, so I personally would place it above Fury Green. I am not expecting for it to end up there. The only thing that I would really push back on is I would not rank this above Chrono Tower, because I was so disappointed in Chrono Tower that it just left a really bitter taste in my mouth. And I mean, say what you will about Varmus, that boss fight stinks, but, like, it's just a random boss fight. The Silex fight stinks, and it should be the climax of the game. So those are my thoughts on Soul Valley. Doom, what say you?
Okay. So first, let me let me talk about what I like about the area first, which admittedly is not a very big list, but I do want to talk about that because I do think there are things that this area does well. Um, I think it is very difficult to have an area like Soul Valley,
Hmm.
where it is, this kind of barren desert. It is very difficult to make an area like that visually cohesive with the rest of the game. And in spite of those odds, I think they knocked it out of the park. And again, we talked about this, during the trailers when we were both excited about Soul Valley before we even knew what it was called. We're like, man, I don't know what these haters are talking about. This still looks awesome, and I concur with that. Like, yeah, there's not a lot going on, but I think visually it really does a nice job blending all these areas together. I also really do like the fact that you can see all the main areas from Soul Valley off in the distance. I think that's a really not just a really cool like visual touch, but also like a really important signpost. So where you don't have to look at the map to know where you're going. You could just look off in the distance and immediately know the general direction of where you travel to. I just think that's like just really smart game design there. So I actually really like that about Soul Valley. I also it's not technically not a Soul Valley thing, it's more of a Viola thing, but the raw action of handling and driving Viola, I think, is a lot of fun. I think the physics are really satisfying. The driving controls feel very smooth. I think the actual act of using Viola in and of itself is a lot of fun in the moment. You also brought up the shrines. I think the shrines are probably one of the strongest points of Soul Valley. It kind of it's a lot of my criticisms of this game is kind of the Zeldification of what Prime 4 feels like. I think this is a Zeldification that kind of works in its favor, though. I think the shrines are like a really fun kind of offshoot that like really find a fun way to incorporate Metroid gameplay in this more Zelda formula. And it also helps that you're earning more than just missile expansions. You're upgrading your shot capabilities, and especially with the Thunder Shot, which is once you get the Super Thunder Shot, it's kind of the best weapon in the game. Like
Totally.
it definitely does feel like, yeah, it definitely feels like you're getting this worthy reward for solving a puzzle.
Hmm.
Now to get into my critiques, unfortunately. And again, I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but
I'm going to defend the good name of the Legend of Zelda here because a lot of people have said that these areas are like Zelda dungeons. Zelda dungeons are not as linear as Flare Pool or Fury Green, or like there's a lot more interactivity in Zelda dungeons. Okay, so anyways,
that I'm not going to fight you on that. That's fair. But obviously, when you think of Soul Valley, the first thing that everyone's going to think of is those damn green crystals. And again, I feel like with a lot of stuff in Prime 4, I think the concept, the idea of what Soul Valley and the green crystals are supposed to be is really cool, but a lot of it comes down to the execution. And unfortunately for me, the execution is a complete miss, a full strikeout, if you will, when it comes to this. And unfortunately, it takes up a pretty, I don't want to say the majority of the game, but a pretty sizable chunk of this game is driving around the desert, collecting these green crystals, and that is the most that you were doing in this desert. And at least for me, I can only do that for so long before the repetition and the boredom kicks in. And I know that the area is trying to make you feel like in this spooky, desolate wasteland, but after a while it just feels like work and less like survival. And I feel like that was my biggest takeaway of this area, is that traveling through this area should have felt fun, but almost like you're out in the wilderness, you're surviving, and that's just not that's not the kind of feeling that I got out of this. It was like I wanted to get out of the area, but for all of the wrong reasons that I would usually want to leave a Metroid area as soon as possible. And then you stack on top of that just kind of, again, you have the shrines, which when they're there are awesome, but that's the key word, when you discover them. And there are 6 of them. There are 6 total shrines in this game.
Could have been a lot more.
Granted, obviously, Soul Valley, nowhere near as big of a map as Breath of the Wild. You cannot put 120 shrines like you could in that game, or however many were in Tears of the Kingdom. I can't remember. But I think there should have absolutely been more than 6 shrines. And maybe
And
I
if
don't know,
there
maybe you
were
could have thought
like
of
if you were
some.
only going to do 6, like they should have been more complex.
Exactly, yeah. And the thing is, some of them I think are pretty satisfying. Like I think the shrine that really stuck out to me the most was the spider ball one, where
Mm-hmm.
you create the psychic spider ball track and you have to weave your way up to the top of the structure. That was like genuinely like a really cool shrine. Like I wouldn't change anything about that. But then you have other shrines like the one that really disappointed me the most was the what's the word? What's the word? It's there's one in the sanctuary fortress, like the little the rings that like spin around each
I
other. I
think
can't I can't
you're
remember what they're
I
called.
think you're
The
describing.
gyro the gyro sphere. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the what is it? The Ring of Thunder one where you got to electrify the rings. Is that it?
No, no, not that one. That's the one where you take your thunder shot and you do it in a circle. I'm talking about like the gyro. So there's a bunch of rings that are spinning around each other in a sphere, and you have to use your control beam to slow down time and shoot the target in the middle to
Oh.
dissipate the rings and create an elevator. And then and spoiler, that's what the solution of the puzzle is. You just use your control beam to slow down
Hmm.
time to dissipate the gyro ring. It creates an elevator, and that's it. You earn your upgrade. And you look at the visual of that, and it looks awesome. I remember that was actually one of the leaked screenshots from the Japanese cover back when we were like speculating on all the tiniest tidbits of info in this game. But yeah, you just fire your control beam. That's it. That's the whole puzzle right there. And I definitely think something like that should have been a little bit more complex, a little bit more intricate, have some more steps associated with that. And so again, when the shrines hit, they hit, but there's few and far between, and unfortunately, not all of them hit for me, which is really unfortunate. And then the Galactic Federation wreckage, as we talked about, and this is another thing where we could kind of critique this across the entire game, because pretty much the entire game barely follows up on that UTO tutorial, which especially Chrono Tower. But I think because you do get a lot of the Galactic Federation wreckage here, it does stand out a bit more in Soul Valley because really all you're doing is you're collecting the mech parts at each of the base, maybe like a missile expansion, and that's about it. And it feels like there was a huge missed opportunity on what you could do. Again, like I thought for sure one of the things that you would be doing would be like outpost style missions where like stranded Galactic Federation and space pirates would be engaged in attack and you have to intervene and turn the tides of the battle, and then
Hmm.
maybe that becomes like a base camp, or then maybe you get a reward for doing something like that. There just really isn't anything like
I
that
agree
at
with that
all.
critique
And so
actually. Like I thought that
mhm.
like you would be like I thought that you'd be going into some of these outposts and like taking an elevator down and like there would be like a sizable level, like maybe to the extent of like one of the floors on Icebelt. I kind of thought there'd be a few of those, so I was disappointed in that. I don't know if I put that against Soul Valley necessarily as like just the game as you were kind of inferring. I will say, you give credit where credit is due. I did like the Takobi interactions. I forgot to mention those, but I just remembered those. Those were nice for what they were.
They're all right. I wish like when you're collecting the items, they were the items on the map were translated a little bit better, because I think everyone came across this where you activate the robot with your thunder shot, and then you see all the little item icons
Yeah.
appear on the map. You go to one spot and then you're just like, where's the item? I can't see the item. I can't hear the item, which that's like a huge important part. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? Is my game's glitched? And then eventually I figured out that like, oh yeah, I have to make Takabi spawn here at some point, and so I kind of just have to do that. And sure enough, that was the key for all of those items that I couldn't figure out in Soul Valley. But I don't know. Again, this kind of goes into more of like what I think of the Federation troopers. I don't love or hate them. They're kind of there. I think Takabi definitely, at least in terms of the backstory, is the most interesting. I especially in the final conversation, I like kind of the ties he makes between him being a bounty hunter versus Samus being a bounty hunter. And yet again, I
Hmm.
like the idea of that, but I think the execution didn't quite didn't quite land for me. But at the same time, like I said, I didn't hate it. It just kind of I don't know. It was just kind of there.
Well, so let's get to the ranking here. So, and just as a quick recap, our list right now, we have number 1, Volt Forge. We have number 2, Great Mines. We have number 3, Ice Belt. Number 4, Fury Green. Number 5, Flare Pool. Number 6, the UTO Research Center. And in dead last, we have Chrono Tower. Where would you rank this in comparison to some of the other areas that we do have on our list?
I gotta put it between Chrono and UTO. Unfortunately, it just this area, and I think honestly I would probably put it even below Chrono Tower, but I am going to respect your wishes and leave Chrono Tower in dead last for that. But I think the big difference between me is whereas Chrono Tower, like I said, I think of all the areas in the game, Chrono Tower is the most disappointing because it completely fails in, it's supposed to be the payoff area, and it completely and spectacularly fails on all fronts in that department. But I think for me, Soul Valley, I was genuinely excited for Soul Valley in spite of like all the criticisms, whether it was good or bad faith that people had when that third trailer came out.
Yeah.
And for me, Soul Valley, I don't want to say it completely failed to deliver on that like Chrono Tower did, but it largely did. And unlike Chrono Tower, you spend a lot of time in this area. And I was pretty disappointed overall. And again, I think a lot of the concepts are cool, and I think in an alternate timeline, there is a Soul Valley that is like perfect for me, and unfortunately, this one is not it though.
I think they'll revisit this concept, and I think that they'll improve it in Metroid Prime 5. This is an area I think that you can really look at and say like, man, being on the Switch 1 really held this area back.
100%.
I'm
right.
I mean, both of us said that it should have been a Switch 2 exclusive, and does that change like what happens here?
That's why I was saying you were, because I wasn't saying that. I was saying that I was fine with it being cross-gen, before we knew anything about the game. You were gung-ho that it should have been a Switch 2 exclusive, and I low-key think you were right.
It happens every now and then, but I mean, like, does it change if it's on Switch 2? Who knows? But I'm not gonna fight you. I think like second to last is probably a fine place for it, and like really, like Chrono Tower and Soul Valley are basically one and the same in this kind of like ranking. So I think that them occupying the last spot is perfectly fine. I guess like to put a bow on it, like, what I value in Metroid Prime areas, or just Metroid areas in general now, is like the areas that are just like really wanting to do something different that we haven't done before. And like I wouldn't necessarily say like, do I think Soul Valley is like a great, like one of the great Metroid areas? No, I don't. I think that it had a lot of potential and it didn't get there. I kind of like the swing it took, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate it more than like the Flare Pool and Fury Green and Ice Belt kind of playing the hits, because like eventually you're just like, I feel like something new. And for me anyways, like I feel like Great Minds was able to differentiate itself and be new, and I feel like those other three weren't. And so I guess I do have an appreciation for Soul Valley for like trying and failing, I guess is how I would say it, versus just like being a Fury Green, which is like a perfectly fine area. Like it's totally fine.
I can agree with that to an extent, but at the same time, for me, because I do appreciate like taking risk. I'll even say that in regards to Prime 4's soundtrack. Well, I like it for the most part. There's definitely some critiques that I will go more into next week, but despite those critiques, I like that. I like that Kenji Yamamoto and Minako Hamano, they did try some things and some, unique philosophies that weren't present in some of their other works, whether it was in Prime or the 2D games. And even though not all of it worked for me personally, I like that they tried it. But I also think that for me, it was executed mostly well. And that's the big difference between Soul Valley, is I just don't think the execution was there for me. And that's ultimately what matters most. I can still appreciate them trying, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
And that's fair. I wouldn't try and talk you out of that. I think that's totally valid and totally fair. Okay, well then we've arrived at the end here, Doom, and we should take a look at our list. And let's go from the bottom to the top. In number 8, I would put this at like number 80 on this list. Chrono Tower at number 7. Soul Valley at number 6. Previously we weren't even going to rank it, but it's leapfrogged over a couple areas. The UTO Research Center. Number 5 is Flare Pool. Number 4 is Fury Green. Number 3 is Ice Belt. Number 2 is Great Mines. And Omega Metroid's best definitive area for Metroid Prime 4. Number 1, Volt Forge. Very, very well earned, I guess I would say. Because like,
yeah, insert crazy guitar solo here.
Yeah. Pretty cool. I would say this about Volt Forge. I think if it wasn't going to be Great Minds, I'm happy that it was Volt Forge, because I do feel like that, again, kind of like takes a chance, takes a swing, it does something different. So I'm happy with this list that we have, by the way. I'm also happy, I gotta say, if you Google Metroid Prime 4 areas, our maps are like all over the place. So that's kind of cool.
As they should be. You and the rest of the team put so much work into, especially that Soul Valley map in particular. Like, is just absolutely stellar, the amount of work you all put into it.
They're on Reddit for some reason too, so that's cool. Okay, well, we are. I think we're gonna get out of here then. We hope that you have enjoyed this area ranking, and you know what? We will revisit this, and we will slot these areas at some point in the Great Metroid Area Ranking, so be on the lookout for that. Until then, my friends, we are going to get out of here, but we do have some shilling to do before we do that. So we'll start off. We want to encourage everybody to go and check out this podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Like, subscribe, recommend, rate, review. Reviews are always really great, especially if you like what we said last week and today. We could use some positive reviews, so if you feel like doing it, that would be really great. And yeah, if you got a Metroid fan in your life, hey, tell them where they can get their weekly Metroid fix. OmegaMetroid.com has all of your Metroid news. It has your Metroid guides. It has your Metroid maps, as we just said. And it's got, I mean, if you're a Metroid fan, OmegaMetroid.com has so much there for you, including a link to our YouTube page, which you should subscribe to because you can see these podcasts in video form if you choose to. And we have some video walkthroughs available there as well. And we do have a Patreon that you can check out, patreon.com/spnet. We did a show on Metroid Prime 4 on GUI Plays Metroid. So lots and lots of bonus content there, including the Great Metroid Area Ranking that we've been referencing. We ranked every single Metroid area. There's like 80 of them. It's crazy. So go and check that out. And lastly, give us a follow over on Blue Sky. I am at Spiteri316. Doom is at Doom_Cross, and we are at Omega Metroid. And that, my friends, is going to do it for us. So until next week, we will see you then when we definitively rank Metroid Prime 4. Take care.